Science.
All right, team, it's Justin here, your host for CBG Online Sports, here with another podcast of CBG Radio. We're here to talk about health, fitness, and anything else related. We have a special deal going on. It's a new part of the company where we are working specifically with CrossFit gyms or personal trainers to provide nutrition coaching. The cool thing about this is that it doesn't cost the gym anything for your members to work with us on nutrition coaching. You will simply get a referral fee for the members that work directly with us on our intrinsic diet program. So if you're looking to team up on this, right, and you have struggled helping your members get to a dieting approach that helps them build confidence, improve their body composition or performance, definitely reach out to CBG Online Sports. Let us know. We're happy to help provide some marketing to you and your team, as well as some other tips to work with some of your members on reaching some of their goals as it pertains to nutrition. Today, I have a special guest on the podcast, Chris Guerrero. He is the founder and president of Westchester Fit. He is very passionate about coaching and inspired by hard work and discipline. Through that passion, he aims to help his athletes improve their lives with diet, exercise, and stress management. He was introduced to CrossFit in 2008. He's competed at the Northeast Regional 2010, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Along with other athletic accomplishments, he's opened CrossFit Westchester, where he's offering nutrition coaching, as well as group classes and personal training, where he, when he started this, he took a huge risk by leaving behind his lucrative career in banking. And now he considers it an honor and privilege to be able to work with the hundreds of athletes that have put their trust in him. Certifications, a long list, but all of the OPT certifications with nutrition, coaching, business systems, program design, assessment. He has his Bachelor of Arts in Kinesiology from the University of Michigan. He has CrossFit Level 1, Level 2, CrossFit Mobility, Kids, Endurance. He's an awesome personal trainer, and he has his CrossFit Powerlifting certification as well. He's going to be talking about today with us, Jillian Michaels, and all of the shenanigans with the CrossFit video that put out. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So I think before we start, I definitely want to give some context to the listeners about, who she is and what we're here to do. So she put out a video on CrossFit. It was probably about 10 minutes long, right? And I think she, at the very beginning of the video, she said that she's not here to bash anyone. Her quote exactly, "I'm not here to bash anyone." I can assure you that we are not here to bash anyone. And I am seeing a lot of coaches online, and I'm sure you are as well, Chris, where they are, I wouldn't even call it bashing. They're calling her like stupid and all these other things. And as coaches, for another coach to see that, or even athletes or potential clients that you might want to work with see that, it's extremely distasteful. And we're going to avoid that at all costs today on the podcast. It's really a discussion about some of the claims that she brought up about CrossFit, some of the misconceptions she might have, and then also some of the things that she actually got right when it comes to the sport, or at least past components of the sport that, may still live in some CrossFit boxes, right? So the first quote that I want to go over with you, Chris, is she said, "You are taking advanced fitness modalities, gymnastics, and Olympic lifts. These are for elite athletes." Let's break that down a little bit.
Yeah, so to a degree, especially when it comes to Olympic lifts, I don't fully disagree. I do believe, however, it is in knowing the audience that you're working with, right? So I mean, there's so many things to say about this specifically, but I think that the misconception that the entire program, that every single one of the 15,000 affiliates across the world runs, is solely based on these two modalities, it's just not true. When I think gymnastics, I'm not thinking about the sport, right? I'm thinking body weight movements. There are elements of gymnastics, but body weight movements, and there was no mention of, it was just a blanket statement with no mention of the hundreds and thousands of ways that you can modify and scale movements for each um, of the clients that you work with in a box, right? So, I mean, over the course of 12 years of working with people one on one and in a group setting, you're going to find people that are contraindicated to snatching and overhead squatting, right? Like just based on their day to day life, past injuries coming in. If someone can't put their arm overhead, then I'm probably not going to teach them how to snatch. So I just kind of think that the blanket statement of almost a lot of the things she said just were broad generalizations. I don't think that those are specifically only for elite athletes. I think that some of the movement patterns they're teaching, hip extension, core to extremity, strength and conditioning, are important for anyone, whether you're just looking to improve and get stronger. So, I mean, that's my general take on it, but it really comes down to building a relationship with the clients that you're working with and knowing who and what certain things are appropriate for.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree completely. I think that she made, like you said, a blanket statement about gymnastics. Like, I mean, if you want to break down where we put specific modalities in a sport of CrossFit, like burpee is technically a gymnastics / body weight based movement, right? And in terms of functionality, I mean, the burpees, there's nothing really more functional than burpee, right? Like, this is how kids learn to walk, is through a burpee segmented movement pattern where they fall and they get up, and they try to walk, they fall and they get up. And then it's integral for long-term health for elderly folks, because if they fall, they either have to get up or they're going to be lying on the ground until someone comes to find them, right? So in terms of functionality and just longevity for movement specifically, gymnastics is not what I think she meant was the extremely complex gymnastics based movements that we see, like handstand push-ups and ring muscle ups and these things. And that's where it becomes inordinately helpful to understand what exercises the client can do based on some of their mobility restrictions. Like you mentioned, if you don't have enough shoulder flexion, you shouldn't be overhead squatting. And then what their goals are as well, right? So let's take someone who wants to be an Olympic lifter, right? He or she wants to be an Olympic lifter, but they're not an elite athlete. How do they start Olympic lifting?
Right. You have to start somewhere. And I think as a whole, one of the biggest issues is that people that see things from the outside, and another one that I love Joe Rogan, but if you ever listen to him talk on his podcast, he doesn't bash CrossFit, but he definitely has this misconception, which I know is one of the things we'll get into, about it being a beatdown after beatdown. I think it's these people view the sport that they've seen on ESPN, and they think that's what's going on every day, every class inside of a local affiliate, which it's just not the case. And if it is the case, then I would probably be the first one to say, yeah, people in that gym are probably going to get hurt, and they shouldn't be doing that based on the caliber or the fitness level of the everyday person. But I just think it's a misconception that people don't understand the day to day. And I don't know if it's something that they just choose not to understand, or they really just feel that what they've seen on TV or what they've been told in a video or something is actually representative of what, you and I and thousands of other coaches are doing.
Right. Yeah, I think you view the world in which, the lens in which it's presented to you. So like through Joe Rogan's view, it may just be he passed by a CrossFit gym and he heard this blaring music and people running around with shirts off, which can be like somewhat intimidating. And it begs the question, like, are these people doing whatever they're doing in there safely? It's, and I think it's the same thing when it shows up on TV, when people are, like Rich Froning are elegantly doing these ring muscle ups and all these other things and are exhausted. It definitely paints a different lens than what we know, which is looking at 8 weeks of progressions, whether it be linear, undulating, conjugation, whatever it might be, on a specific program with structured deloads to make sure that people are getting enough recovery and all these other things. And then the conversations that we're having with athletes all throughout a various mesocycle of 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, right? That's where the true coaching comes in. And I think a lot of these misconceptions could be alleviated. But of course, they don't, Joe Rogan and Jillian Michaels, they won't have this perception because they're not embedded in the CrossFit space in any real capacity,
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So I think we covered that one. There's another part on gymnastics and Olympic lifts that I think's a lot more interesting that she said and is a lot more debatable. So I want to get into that a little bit later. But the next quote she has here is, the barrier to entry in CrossFit is too small. And the context here was that CrossFit coaches should not be teaching Olympic lifts because they don't specialize in it. The barrier to entry in CrossFit is too small. So I just want to make sure that we have that context there, because I don't want to misconstrue the context in which she presented that particular statement. But she did allude to the fact that, you can go through a course and then, right, you can open up your box, which we know is true. This is with enough money and a level 1, you can open up a box, right? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't fully disagree with that. I've said for a really long time that I think, to me, what makes a really good coach is someone that is empathetic, someone that is open-minded, someone that is willing to learn from others, and someone that's enthusiastic, right? And this is like what I'm talking about from someone that I'm going to hire, right? Like if I'm going to hire somebody at my gym to coach people, that's what I look for. I don't necessarily look for the technicality right away, because it's something that they can learn and we can teach them. And they're not going to be on their own. Now, if you have the thought process, like I'm going to go to a level 1, I had absolutely no background in fitness. I myself do not live a fit, healthy lifestyle, but this seems like a good idea and a good way to make money. Then, playing devil's advocate, I could see where she would say that. The truth is, and I don't have percentages on this, but through the various specialty certs or level 1, I've had to take it 2 or 3 times. Level 2, I've taken twice. Like, most of the people there are coaches, or they've been coaching, or they own gyms, or they've been in the fitness industry for an extended period of time. And of all the certifications that I've actually taken, I think it actually teaches you how to coach in a group setting better than anything else. Now, in regards to what does she specifically mean, the barrier to entry to train someone? Is it the barrier to entry to open a business? I'm assuming she means that you get a level 1 and you can say you're a trainer and you can start training people. But, my philosophy has always been, you can give someone a program that is, let's say a 5 out of 10, 10 being the best, right? And if you get them to buy in 10 out of 10, and that person is consistent long-term, I will take that all day over someone who writes a perfect program, but they can't get that person to buy in more than 50% of the time. It just long-term, that person will not see results. They will not see success. So it's like, I don't really know that outside of the fact that I think there should be some kind of criteria, like once you get your level one, you need to coach at an affiliate that signs off for maybe like 50 hours before you're allowed to like open an affiliate or something. I kind of agree with that. But again, it was just the way that she presented these points very matter of factly that I think rubbed people the wrong way. And look, to each their own opinion. I don't fault her for having her opinion. It's just that's kind of my take on it. I'm interested to hear what you think.
Yeah. I think that, oh man, it's tough because I've seen CrossFit coaches and businesses abuse the fact that the barrier to entry is small-ish. I wouldn't say that the CrossFit level 1 has no value. I've taken it myself. I thought it had tremendous value. I thought the coaches there that taught the course were amazing. I thought they were just like top-notch coaches in terms of teaching movement, and segmenting Olympic lifts, where the context here is that you shouldn't be teaching Olympic lifts unless you specialize in it. So I've seen CrossFit coaches and boxes abuse this. And what I mean by that is I've seen CrossFit business owners open up a CrossFit gym for the sake of making money through the subscription model, right? The volume-based model that CrossFit has currently. Other gyms are moving away from that model, but currently it is still a volume-based model. And I know that people open up CrossFit gyms to take advantage of that model, even though they don't care about empathize with the restrictions an athlete might have as it pertains to Olympic lifts. It doesn't matter to them. They paid for the month. You're offering them CrossFit. CrossFit is supposed to be this sound program. You don't need to empathize with people individually, right? And that's where you start running into a lot of issues, and you will find people like Jillian Michaels, these loopholes in the system where there are bad CrossFit coaches and there are bad CrossFit gyms in general. Yeah. And there are other people that have fallen through the cracks in the opposite way. People that had no background, like Max Al-Haj from Training Think Tank. Zero background. Found CrossFit, started working with James Fitzgerald, and is now one of the most amazing wizard programmers available in the CrossFit space, right? And I would let him teach any one of my clients, any one of my athletes how to Olympic lift. I'd say, you know what? I'm just going to let Max teach you what he knows about segmenting the snatch here. I'm just going to step back. I know I'm your coach, but I'm just going to let Max do this, right? That's how confident I am in him. And he started just with the level 1. He doesn't have a specific, he's probably does now, but at the time he didn't have specific degrees in CrossFit or Olympic lifting to help people do things. And the thing that I think is the most important here is when you're speaking about Olympic lifts, which is the context that she talks about here in terms of the barrier to entry is too small, you just, at least the CrossFit level 1 will make sure that you understand the segment of each lift and what the lift looks like. And if you see someone moving unsafely, whether that be with a PVC pipe, the barbell, a weighted barbell, or for time, you're able to stop them and either make corrections or tell them to scale to another movement, right? CrossFit in itself, the definition does not say intensity first, mechanics, then consistency. It says, right. Intensity is the last component of the CrossFit model, right? And if coaches are doing that, you're good, right?
Exactly. And kind of to piggyback off what you said, small world, I actually know Max from before, CrossFit days. Him and I grew up in the same area, but some of the best coaches that I've ever worked with, they don't have an academic background. I mean, one of the most brilliant coaches that I've ever worked with is Julian from StrongFit. The guy is like a wizard and he has a lot of very out of the box concepts and ideas. But it's a lot of hands-on working with people, and these people, like Max included, and it's kind of something that I said in the beginning. I don't think it's about reading books and things like that, although that does help, because that was one of the things that, she said about having a degree. I think it's about being open-minded and being willing to learn from others. And as it pertains to teaching Olympic lifts, if we have an Olympic hopeful and they come to a CrossFit gym, that person may want to seek out someone that specifically specializes in Olympic weightlifting for such a high caliber athlete that's going to go to the Olympics. For the average person that's going to get a dose of snatching maybe once a week or once every other week, I think the level 1 is more than sufficient to teach the basic mechanics of the movement. As you said, their methodology is mechanics, consistency, intensity. But for some reason, the misnomer is that it's the other way around. Intensity, repetition, and then mechanics, like that they don't teach or care about form. Now, as it pertains to, again, and I go back to the human aspect of it, you do have some coaches that get level 1s, and they might not be people, like people persons, and they don't want to correct or fix people's movement, but that's not the fault of the actual certification itself, because there definitely is very much a breakdown, step-by-step, how to teach each movement. And I've never seen another course or anything for that matter break such advanced movements down where you can show someone who has no experience of doing something how to do something, at least to a degree that they're not going to hurt themselves, again, if they're not contraindicated, within a matter of 15 minutes with a PVC pod. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely. I think the last thing I want to sort of mention about this, I've learned, and the CrossFit community is really good about this. The coaches in the CrossFit community that I've interacted with, for the most part, are very good about, if you ask them a question, they will go into explicit detail, whether it be about an Olympic lift, gymnastics, the programming that's designed. We love to talk about CrossFit, and we love to share knowledge about CrossFit to others, whether it be simple tricks or tips or about the workout itself and how to scale it. And I've learned more from that in watching high-level athletes perform cleans and snatches over and over and over again than I did from reading any book ever, right? So for what it's worth, right, I think that what she means here is there are bad coaches in CrossFit that got the level 1 and started their gyms, and the athletes and clients at that gym are suffering in several ways, potentially in the form of injury or pain when it comes to Olympic lifts, because it's a coaching issue. It's not a CrossFit issue. But you could also say there's a bad steakhouse, there's a bad lawyer, there's a bad doctor, there's a bad, restaurant. There's just a multitude. It's just, again, you have to search for quality, which is actually something she came back to at the end of the whole segment. But it would have been nice for her to reiterate that throughout, because it almost made it seem like there are no quality CrossFit coaches. But if you are going to learn this, you have to learn it from someone that's quality. But the 9 minutes preceding that statement that she said at the end was like, basically, you're not going to find that in a CrossFit gym. Is the way I kind of interpreted it. Well, I think she wanted to start the fire, and then after she started the fire, she wanted to kind of put it out a little bit, tame it down a little bit, because she realized how hard she went in, or thought how hard she went in on the sport and things in general. But that's my take on the barrier to entry. There are other certifications and things available also in the CrossFit space that you can take. There are several other expert coaches that you can talk to. And seek out a coach that knows what they're doing, right? That's important. She said that at the end. I think that is important. The next quote here is, I don't understand the trainer logic. To me, CrossFit is about exercises, but it's not about having a plan. Having a training specific program and progressing that plan. To me, it seems like beating after beating after beating after beating. Chris, thoughts?
I have a lot to say. I have a lot to say on this one. So, and I have to say this because this coming from someone where I could reverse the roles and say, I don't understand the trainer logic in Biggest Loser trainers. They go from taking people that are morbidly obese and sick and on their deathbed to coming in and starving them and beating them to the ground, knowing that in the long run, these people are going to relapse the second they go home, right? So I could say that and give her kind of what she gave me. But I mean, look, this is kind of my take on it. If I had Jillian Michaels come to my gym knowing who she was, and I don't know what her experience was, whether she went to a gym or not, what's the first thing? This is really cool. Jillian Michaels is coming to my gym. I'm going to give her like such a kick-ass workout and try to make her like, just make her do what you saw her doing to people on TV, right? Maybe that was her experience. I don't know. To say that there is no logic or progressions or periodization or any kind of like system in which places are programming workouts is just asinine and flat out wrong. And again, I think it comes back to just having a base knowledge. Oh, so they think constantly vary just means like, okay, so we're just going to randomly put things together, right? They're just going to randomly, one day you run 5 miles, the next day you're going to back squat 5 sets of 5, and then you're going to do, 1 million push-ups and 1 million pull-ups. Like, I don't really see anything wrong with doing that and varying it. And again, of course, scaling and modifying based on people's individual level. But, most places that I see have gone beyond just CrossFit, and they have something where there's like they'll go through like a 6 to 8 week period where they're building strength. And there's like a linear progression. It's something that I see in a lot of gyms, right? They'll do a linear progression. As the weights get heavier, the reps go down, they'll do some testing. And part of this is also people's psychology, right? People are competitive by nature and they want to get better. So it's not just like a random beatdown. Now, I will say I have, on the other hand, I'm not going to completely disagree with her, see places where it's like, all right, today we're going to do a 5x5 back squat at 85%, and then we're going to do a hero WOD, right? Yeah. Where we're just absolutely smashing ourselves 5 days in a row. And as much as some of my clients think that that's what they need, because I think people equate sweating and that beat down to a good workout, and they're not mutually exclusive, like sweating does sometimes correlate to that, but understanding, and again, the explanation and how the coaches and how the overall culture of the gym is built, and understanding, guys, during strength cycles, we're going to be resting more in between our sets. You're not going to feel your heart pounding like you normally do. This is important to build strength because of XYZ. It again goes down to the quality of the coach and the programming and their education. Obviously, can you go in and find a gym where they're going to do a hero WOD every other day or a 30-minute AMRAP every other day? I'm sure. I think it's a lot less common now than it was back in 2015, 2016 or earlier. But the case is, yes, if you go to a gym like that, which I would like to say is in the minority now, then yeah, you're probably going to get a bunch of people who are, their hormones are all out of whack. There's injuries, there's overtraining, symptoms of that. But if you go to a regular gym and you're suggesting people actually take rest days and, some of the stuff we were talking about before this call with like rest and recovery and nutrition, someone coming in and doing CrossFit 3 to 4 times a week, they're going to get in fantastic shape and they're not going to get hurt. It's just a matter of whether you're kind of as a coach explaining and really connecting with your clients as to what the program is, why you're doing it, and then you have to get them to buy into it, right, and understand and enjoy it. And like a quick anecdote, we were doing a strength cycle recently where we kind of went back to old school where you're just squatting on that day. And people were so like getting so bored with it. And I told my coaches, guys, film a video, put it in our private Facebook group and explain why we're doing it. Second we did that, attendance went back up, and then all of a sudden, once it was testing week and everyone was smashing PRs, whether it was people who had just joined or were there for 7 or 8 years, everyone was all of a sudden excited because they saw the progress and they're like, oh, okay, that's why we did that. But again, it just comes down to who who is programming and who's coaching you.
It's not strange to me that the people or gyms I think she was talking about that have this low barrier to entry and invested in CrossFit as a business opportunity and have no empathy are also the same gyms that have Diane program Monday, Fran program Tuesday, Hero Wad program Wednesday, right? These are the same gyms that we're talking about. There are several parallels when it comes to these things. And I will say, for those of you out there that know about CrossFit and the programming, for those of you that don't, in my personal opinion, based off of the program that I've done for our athletes, I think that it's the hardest sport to program for based on the X number of modalities, that's not even the most difficult part. It's still an endurance-based sport. Like at the end of the day, CrossFit is an endurance-based sport, right? The plethora of the different types of athletes that are involved in the sport, whether it be performance, weight loss, people that are just trying to improve mobility, stay healthy, and improve longevity. And then, obviously, there are the different components of strength incorporated in CrossFit. There are different components of muscle endurance incorporated in CrossFit. And once you start to take look at a broad picture of every single variable that's encompassed within the CrossFit model and what's required in the sport, and quote unquote required, I mean, for performance athletes, it's very difficult to program for in a structured way and making sure you're keeping people safe. They're hitting the structure, the SRA curve, right? Where they're adapting from their training, not getting injured. I think that is, it's hard to do, but it doesn't have to be. If you put time and effort into understanding your athletes and what they need, and you're not just programming these hero wads day after day after day, you'll improve, your gym's fitness capabilities and programming at your gym, right? So yeah, that's what I would say about training specific programs, how it pertains to CrossFit, and her understanding of it is, I think, probably because it's too complex for her to understand, because she hasn't programmed any CrossFit before or been to a CrossFit box for 4 to 6 weeks to understand the programming there. It's not what she's used to doing,
Right. It would almost be like if, someone wanted to come try a class out to see if they like it, and you're like, well, you can do that, but probably need at least a week, realistically a month, to get a full gist of it, right? So it's like she's just almost like the person that dropped into the gym and was like, this isn't for me. This was like a beat down, or they only did lifting, or they only did endurance stuff. It's like you have to understand the full breadth of the program, and because there's so many components involved, if you don't immerse yourself for a period of time where you get exposure 12 to 15 to 18 to 20 times to that kind of workout, you're not going to know really the true efficacy of it. So it's a surface blanket statement from somebody who clearly doesn't have, and again, I don't know that she doesn't have it, or she just has not chosen to even give it an opportunity to really learn and understand it, which is a shame, because she has such a large audience that, if she gave it a shot and really did it for a month at a good gym where, they program well, she might be like, okay, this is good. I can see why people love it. It's not for me, but, and then that would be okay. But it just almost sounds like someone that's unwilling to even try, and then just make all these statements as, again, matter of fact, as if she knows that those are a fact based on what she has been told in her limited experience or exposure to it.
Yeah, I definitely I resonate with what you said there. It makes a lot of sense, and maybe one day she will try it. If she actually sits down and maybe has intelligent conversations with high-level coaches about this, instead
Right.
of making an IGTV live video that's one-sided, I think she could gain a lot of insight into the sport and its purpose for the average person and not the performance athlete, because performance is a whole another
it's
thing.
A whole other animal.
It's a whole other thing. And I think she kind of blended the two a lot of the times, right? The next quote she has here, this is my favorite one, because I think it's the most complex. This is what I think she got the most correct. When you have exercises that are so technical, like Olympic lifts and gymnastics, why are you doing them for time? What do you think about this?
I think, again, a lot of the answers, like I don't necessarily see anything wrong with what she said. It's a good question. And I think for the vast majority of people out there, it might not be super appropriate to do something like this, but then you kind of have to start to think about what are the goals of that individual person. If it's to build something like absolute strength in one of these lifts, like a snatch or a clean and jerk, yeah, I'm probably not going to have that person doing grace over and over and over and over again, right? Like it's one of those things where we may want to use, like I know specifically, like if I'm programming lifts for an athlete like this, I'll use Prolepin's chart in regards to the amount of reps relative to the intensity or percentage level that I want that person to perform on that day. So maybe they're getting anywhere from 6 to 20 reps, but there's rest in between. We'll use like an every minute on the minute or an every 90-second format, so that once we've gone through, warmed up the body, warmed up the movement, built up in weight to the movement, then you're getting reps in under a time constraint, but not like a grace, for example, type intensity. I do think it's appropriate to have the average person doing, but then on the other hand, I also don't see from time to time the average person doing something, as long as their mechanics are built in solid and they've consistently been training for a while, adding that intensity element, maybe not at such a high load. So that's why we scale stuff, right? So for a workout, like a CrossFit workout like Grace, that's 135-pound clean and jerks for time for men for 30 reps, if someone's max clean and jerk is 185 pounds, I'm going to substantially scale the weight for them so that they feel the stimulus, they get the work done in the allotted time frame, and they're able to do so safely, right? They're able to move well. I don't see anything wrong with doing that every so often either. But again, it always goes back to, is this person contraindicated? Every gym has those, handful of people that no matter how much you coach them, they're just not going to move well and they're going to try to push the intensity. Those are the people that you have to be careful with on something like this, because they could hurt themselves. They could hurt themselves, but you can hurt yourself doing anything, right? Yeah. You can hurt yourself sitting on the couch for too long by getting diabetes and, gaining too much weight and the whole plethora of things that are wrong with inactivity. So
yeah,
I could see why she would say something like that, though. She sees something like the CrossFit Games, these guys doing these crazy heavy weights, some of them getting really tired from the progressive beatdown they've taken the week prior, and thinking that that's what people are doing at gyms with like the average person. And in that case, then yeah, probably I wouldn't think that it's the best idea.
Right. Yeah, this is an interesting one for me. I agree with everything that you said. The question becomes, so if the person cannot move safely, we know the answer there, right? And I'm just trying to go through some of her sort of questions. We know that if someone's targeting performance, and let's say, for example, they're not moving perfectly, but they're targeting performance, this is where we see a lot of people ignoring the definition of CrossFit and going for it. We'll see this. Then becomes the people in between, right? The people that, one, or really you can kind of put them in the same category. People that can move safely, right? But do they need to be doing snatching and overhead squats and workouts? And you had mentioned at the time, or just a little bit ago, that if they can move with a particular intensity and with good mechanics, then why not? I'm wondering if she's also asking, like, here, does she mean like almost why? Like why snatch in a workout? And I have an opinion on this, but I want to get your, why snatch when you can just front squat for these people? Even if you're moving safely, like why do that? Is it just the constantly varied component, or are there other components to this, in your opinion?
Well, I would think it would go back to the functionality of movement, right? And truthfully, I don't know in what real world context you're going to be doing a squat snatch. I've yet to find one where I would think that you are. Yeah. But something like a clean, right? Like a clean and jerk or a clean and press.
Yep.
You know, that's as simple as someone on an airplane picking up a heavy bag and putting it into the overhead compartment. You know,
right.
That to me is a lot more functional. So again, I'd like to do both. And it also depends on the essence of the athlete. If you're in a group setting and you have a group of people that, you know, they've been working with you for a while, they're really into it, like, why not program it? But I think one of the things that a lot of it, like at least my business did, is I agree in the sense that, okay, so for this kind of technical movement, why not build someone's strength with something more simple like a deadlift to teach them, or a back squat or a front squat, and then have a specialty program for Olympic lifting, right? Where that whole class is just revolved around that. And then you have people that are more geared towards working on that, work with coaches who not only have a level 1, but have like a USAW cert, just because they're giving those people who want that specialized attention a more specialized focus. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's just one of those things, again, knowing your audience and knowing what they want. And if it's safe, my question would be, why not?
Right. Yeah, she's asking why, and CrossFit people are asking why not. So it's an interesting sort of, I wanted to get your take on it. I think for the average gym goer that just wants to do CrossFit as an outlet to either as a competitive mode in their life, or if they're just going for health and longevity, it doesn't need to be programmed as much as it's been programmed in the past for time.
1,000% agree with that. And I will say over the last 3 months, we've programmed snatches and clean and jerks in the hundreds of days, you know, like a handful of times, like 2 or 3 times, you know, like, so I agree with you, but that's also just based on knowing who our audience is, right?
Right.
We're not programming because we don't have that clientele that's like an elite level clientele. We have a few people that are, but they get better by doing the basics.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think that the movement patterns, like the snatch and the overhead squat, that are extremely difficult for people, there are significant adaptations from that. There is a book by Katie Bauman called, I forget the name of it's something to do with movement in your DNA, like move your DNA. And she describes how movement influences the proteins that our body makes, all the way to the, you know, from the cellular level all the way into DNA, right? And she talks about how movement is so important and moving differently is so important. I think that that's an awesome thing, and I think she's right on target. I personally don't know if it needs to be done for time as often as it's been prescribed in the CrossFit. I think it's possible to work on building prerequisite strength, joint stabilization, and strength of different joint ligaments and tendons through an overhead squat in the beginning of the workout as the strength portion, and then possibly incorporating front squats as opposed to overhead squats for time. Now, if you're a performance athlete, what I'm saying does not pertain to you. Or if you're competing with your buddies at your gym and you guys want to do the same workout and go hard and you're moving safely, what I'm saying does not pertain to you. I'm talking about people that are using CrossFit as an outlet for exercise, weight loss, health, and longevity. I don't think overhead squats are necessary for the majority of people, are not necessary in a 4-time format. Just not, especially at elevated loads, right?
I agree with that. Yeah.
So she's not totally off target there. I just think she didn't specify who the hell she's talking about. Like, is it the performance athlete? And she does this the entire way, which is why we have to talk about this for an hour to figure out what she's trying to say. But yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, go ahead.
Which is I think the main issue is she just talking about the masses? Like you said, the person that's coming in 3 times a week that wants to have a little more energy, they want to lose some weight and be healthy and get in shape, and they work at a desk all day and they don't have, proper shoulder flexion. Yeah, I'm probably not going to have that person doing Isabel 3 times a week or snatching, maybe not snatching at all. I might just teach them some kind of hip extension movement, like a kettlebell swing or something, right?
Right.
In lieu of that. But again, it's the blanket statement, which I think got a lot of people's feathers ruffled. So
definitely. Yeah. The next thing I want to skip over to is every friend that I've had in CrossFit has had a serious injury. Quote from the video, every friend that I've had in CrossFit has had a serious injury.
Okay, so this is the thing that she said in the whole video that got me the most worked up. And it wasn't about the injury. It was her reference to Bob Harper. She didn't say his name, but we all know that that's who she was talking about, having a heart attack.
Yep.
She essentially, maybe she didn't mean it this way, but this is the way I took it and the way a lot of other people did, said that even my friend had a heart attack while doing it. What she failed to mention was that heart disease runs in Bob's family. He was in the beginning stages of heart disease. He had some issues with his heart. And he himself admitted after the fact that he had several weird or unusual episodes where he got super dizzy and had to take a knee in the gym, leading up to this happening. So to make that blanket statement, especially about the heart attack thing, I found extremely distasteful, extremely misleading. And it's just for, again, someone with her following reach to say something like that. You hear these sad stories all the time. A healthy dad of 3 that's 41 gets out of the pool. They're a triathlete. They drop dead, right?
Yeah.
That's why heart disease is the leading cause of death in the country.
Number one.
It's for a reason. And, how many friends has she had that have had a serious injury from CrossFit? Who does she know that's done CrossFit? What is this inner circle that she has? Because this goes back to that whole original study. What was it? The NCSA that put out that fake study about the injury rates in CrossFit, and then Glassman had the whole thing retracted, they had fabricated the numbers.
Yep.
Look, exercise or movement in general, there is an inherent risk in all of that. Life, there's an inherent risk in getting in your car and going out in everything that we do, right?
Yeah.
So running probably has the highest injury rate out of any exercise that you can do. Now, granted, probably it's the most, I would say, exercise that the most people in the world partake in is running. So you're going to have the highest numbers, but to imply, again, that with a blanket statement, every friend that I've had in CrossFit has had a serious injury, especially the heart attack thing, it's kind of what bothered me the most. Because I'm not going to sit here and say that we've never had anyone get injured in our gym. Things happen when you're in there. Now it's a matter of, again, was this person being coached improperly and pushed too hard to do something that they weren't supposed to do? That I would frown upon. Is it that this person is trying to come in 6 days a week on 4 hours of sleep, eating a crappy diet, pushing themselves too far even when their coaches are telling them not to? You have to deal with the human ego, which is a very strong thing. And again, it goes back to the relationship of the coach and the athlete and what they buy into with the program, how they modify, how we scale things. So there's just a lot. And that was the one that bothered me the most of everything that she said, in particular with the heart attack.
Yeah, it was a cheap way to shoot out a sly at the sport. And the way that she said it, she knew exactly what she was doing there, which makes it even more interesting because you have the chance before putting anything online to review it before publishing it. It's not like it's live or anything like that, right?
Right.
So I think that was, it was extremely distasteful on her part. And look, there are people out there that are former athletes that haven't trained in 10 years and decide that they're going to go out and run a 5K and they have a heart attack or they go into cardiac arrest. Absolutely, that's
Right.
happened to people. It happens all the time. My wife works in a hospital. She tells me about these stories of these things happening to grown adults that feel like they have the same capabilities that they once had, right? The blanket statement here, and the sample size was, albeit very small as well. She said, every friend, and then she went on and alluded to the fact that the 7 friends that did CrossFit also quit. So I don't know if that's the same sample size that she's describing. But either way, the injury in itself, and understand a little bit about how injury works, right, is it's a constant accumulation of micro tears and fractures in the muscle and the tendon and bone and ligaments, right? And it's through not recovering properly. And the training piece is one component. And like you said, Chris, there are other components like sleep, nutrition, hydration. And it also depends on the type of injury that has occurred, right? So they have systemic fatigue that results in, a chronic injury that maybe someone's been dealing with for the long term. You have acute injury, which is the injury that everyone feels that happens in CrossFit all the time, which is very uncommon, like someone dropping a barbell on their head. That's really very uncommon, these acute type of injuries. It's really the chronic injuries over the course of over a sustained period of time. And I think that the injury rate in CrossFit has improved significantly over the past 5 years. I'm not saying there aren't people that haven't gotten hurt or have gotten hurt in CrossFit, but I will stand by every day the fact that the CrossFit modality and in general, the sport in and of itself as a training tool is better for people broadly than sitting at home and not doing a program at all. So
it's definitely helping more people than it's hurting, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's really what I would take from the serious injury, which was fairly broad. We don't understand what that means. We don't understand the daily lives and what people are doing for the recovery, or you just, sleep and everything else that they need to do to sort of take care of their bodies in general, So it's just a really open-ended statement. But yeah, what really stuck out to me was the same thing that stuck out to you, which was the heart attack thing, which people are not having heart attacks because of CrossFit. The people that I'm mentioning that had a heart attack or go into cardiac arrest after years and years of not training. That's why they had the heart attack. They went years and years without training, right? Or working out or anything. All right, man, last one. We kind of already touched on this, but it says here, she said, honestly, I think for CrossFit, you need someone with a degree. Your coach should have a degree in exercise science.
I disagree. I mean, I don't. I just flat out disagree. And some of the best coaches that I've ever worked with, and I've worked with some really, really, really amazing coaches from the standpoint of learning from them or getting programmed from them. I've worked, Jason Layden from Milford, CrossFit Milford, Adam Rogers, who works with Training Think Tank and Max. I'm working, like the guy I'm working with now, Coach Michael Band from OPEX, super, super sharp dude. And he actually has an academic background and he is wicked smart. But I've also worked with guys like Julian with Strong Fit that I've done a lot of stuff with them where he's just a guy that just is like the consummate, just wants to learn and craves knowledge and diving down the rabbit hole and not taking things at context just because they're said in a book. I don't believe just because you read a book or go to school for something necessarily is going to have anything to do with your effectiveness in coaching people and understanding how to coach. I really don't. And it goes back to the first experience that I ever had in the gym when I was growing up and I was 15 years old. And I went into a world gym in my town. And I remember thinking in my head, this guy approached me, this personal trainer, and, was telling me all of his NASM certification, all these certifications he had and why I should train with him. And all I could think of in the back of my head was, this guy doesn't even look like he works out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what is he going to show me? Not to say, and I'm not saying in any way that the coach that you work with has to look a certain way or they even have to train, but it goes back to the education of it. Like, I don't necessarily believe that someone has to have an actual academic background or an exercise physiology degree to be able to help someone get in shape. I really don't. I don't believe that at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't believe it either. I think that there are specific training tools that can only be understood through doing, which is obviously the famous quote by Confucius, you do and you remember. So, and that's how you're really able to teach things over the long term, especially to others, which is what the expectations are from you as a coach. Does a degree in exercise science or another related field like kinesiology help? Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it does help. But yeah, it's almost like there are coaches that come right out of school that are not good coaches. I mean, like you said, it's kind of like judging the book by its cover or the inverse with the guy
right.
that you came across when you were 15 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He had all these certifications, but on the exterior, these things don't always line up. And just because you have a degree doesn't necessarily mean you're a great coach. And just because you don't have a degree, just because you are a great coach doesn't mean you necessarily have a degree, right? So it's sort of both ways.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of the two, and I don't want people to think in any way, shape, or form that I am suggesting that having an education or an exercise physiology degree is not a great thing to have. I do think, a basic understanding of human anatomy, muscles, connective tissues will make you a better coach. And if that is what she meant, then sure, because, if someone's back is bothering them or their shoulders bothering them or they can't move a certain way, like understanding just basic anatomy, physiology will help you. It will. But I don't necessarily think that I think that someone that's a coach is going to have some semblance of knowledge. Like, if you have a trainer that doesn't know what a bicep muscle is or where your hamstring is, yeah, that's probably an issue.
Yep. Yeah, I agree completely. Dude, I think we should leave it there. She made some fairly broad blanket statements about the sport of CrossFit, and I think she owes it to the CrossFit community to sit down with some experts and debate them about, I mean, we're adults, it's just be an adult conversation about this, right? This is not, little kids at the playground, like making fun of each other, right?
Right.
It's all adults. We could sit around and she can get some experts on her end that support some of her claims and CrossFit experts on our end. But I think that that's the appropriate way to do it. I think that she owes the CrossFit community more of an explanation or a detailed explanation of what she meant by some of the claims that she brought forward. And look, she isn't stupid. She's been in the fitness industry for a really long time. She knows the business side of fitness really well, whether she uses it for her personal gain or not. And I think based off of all of her experience, she's someone that can understand absolutely what it is that CrossFit athletes do, or just average weekend warriors that decide to go to the CrossFit gym to stay in shape. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with that, and even just being more open to a dialogue with anyone. I mean, just kind of discussing, like, because he even acknowledged some of the points about it, like that people love it, that people have gotten in shape doing it. And I've always been a coach that's told my clients, if they've ever come to me and be like, hey, I've kind of had a change of heart, I want to try this out, I always encourage them to do it, right? Oh, you want to go try Barry's Boot Camp or Orange Theory? Awesome. Go do it. Enjoy it. You have my contact info. We'd love to have you back if and when you ever, decide that you want to come back. You want to train for triathlon? Awesome. Are you working with a coach? Whatever the case is, I think as fitness trainers and people that are passionate about health and fitness, which I know she is, almost like putting down something that helps so many millions of people. She could have gone about it a different way. And I think, opening up a dialogue with some people from the community would be a cool thing. I don't expect it to happen, but I think it would be cool.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obesity's the killer, man. It's an epidemic, and I think more coaches need to come together to sort of resolve this problem, put their business incentives aside a little bit when it comes to bashing other companies or what other people decide to do. It's getting a little out of hand with social media, people being a little home crazy, I think, and they just feel the need to share their opinions in ways that they probably don't need to be shared in that way, in a bashing format. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next. But look, man, Chris, we appreciate you coming on the podcast, dude. It was great talking with you about everything, and looking forward to chatting with you more in the future about business and everything else related. Where can people find you on social media or anywhere else?
So on Instagram, you can find me. My handle is Coach_Chris_Guerrero. Our website for the business website is westchesterfit.com. And feel free to reach out to me if you disagree with anything I said or agree with anything I said. I'm always open to having a conversation with anyone regarding anything health and fitness related. It's my life, and it's just something that I really love and enjoy talking about. So thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it, man.
You got it, Chris. Looking forward to talking to you soon, and catch you later.